Hello. You've delivered your speech. You've finished your panel conversation. You have completed your talk, and now it's the moment that you open up to the floor to ask questions. Now, for some people, this is the most exciting bit. This is the bit where they get to freestyle. This is the bit where they get to kind of just be completely themselves. They haven't got a script to worry about. For other people, this is the stuff of nightmares. You've finished, you feel like you've done a good job, and then you get the exact question that you were really hoping and praying wasn't going to get asked. And you can feel your mind go blank. You can feel your energy rise up in the body. You can feel the fear starting to prickle your skin. And you know that you look like a rabbit in the headlights. You look like you're completely frozen. You bumble out some words, no real idea what it is you're saying. And you know in that moment that you've lost impact, you've lost gravitas, and you've lost a degree of status with this particular audience that you've just spent the last 20 minutes, half an hour building up. Today, we are going to dive into how to deal with difficult questions during a question and answer session, and how, as a leader, that is really going to benefit you in terms of your status, in terms of your credibility, and in terms of your potential. But why is it important? Why do we need to be able to deal with difficult questions? Well, the higher up you go in an organisation, or the larger your business becomes, the more visible you are, the more challenges you are going to have to deal with. There's just no way around it. The whole point of leadership is that you are dealing with the challenges. You are where the buck stops. That's just the truth of the matter. But not only that, those questions, those difficulties become much, much more nuanced at that stage. It's not a question of black and white, yes and no. There's a much more complexity that is involved at this stage of business and of your career. So when you can answer those difficult questions in those difficult moments, you are answering an incredible opportunity. You are marketing yourself as a leader who can deal with complexity, who can deal with nuance, and is doing so with absolute grace, with respect for the question asker, with respect for themselves, respect for the audience, respect for the topic itself. So there's a real possibility that you can show yourself to be an incredibly competent, confident leader when you're answering these difficult questions, especially when you do it with absolute grace. But I think the most important reason for dealing with this, for being able to answer those difficult questions, is that we live in an incredibly fast-moving world. There is no possibility that you can know the answer to everything. It just isn't possible. So all parts of leadership, there's a degree of being able to deal with uncertainty, and showing and demonstrating in front of a live audience that you can deal with uncertainty is such an incredible skill and a real opportunity to market yourself as somebody who can deal with ambiguity, who doesn't necessarily know the answer to absolutely everything, but can lean back and trust in their expertise, draw on things that they do know, and create an answer given the situation, the audience, the person that's asked, what is going on in the world. You can draw all of those things together and answer the question as best you can. Or when the time is right, when it's appropriate, admit that you don't know the answer, but you can make some damn good educated guesses. So it's really important as a leader that we can deal with these difficult questions. Important for the people that we work for, the people we work with, for ourselves and our career. Now, the reason I'm talking about this today is because I had a call this week with a potential new client, and it just so happened on the day that we were talking, she had to be part of a panel discussion. And normally she's quite happy to do this kind of thing. Today, it had all gone horribly wrong. She was asked by a member of the audience to discuss the fact that they had a very wealthy Russian as a major shareholder in their organisation. Now, the organisation knew this was likely to come up in panel discussions, so HR had prepared a kind of press statement, if you like, that this lady could rely on. Unfortunately, when the question came up and she kind of knew it was coming, she had a bit of a panic and she dived straight into the detail, giving the audience way too much information and over-justifying. Now, whenever we over-justify, our audience always senses there's something else going on. Over-justification means we aren't quite convinced ourselves, or we're trying to hide something. And we're trying to hide something by giving people way too much detailed information. So when we talked about what that might mean for her audience, she realised that she dived too deep into the detail too quickly and the impact that had made with the audience. And she also realised that part of the impact of answering a difficult question is not actually so much the content, which is important, but it is how you deliver it. And she could feel that she was becoming anxious as she was answering, her rate of speech was increasing, her breath was becoming more shallow, and she was garbling her answer to this particular audience. She kind of wanted it to be over and finished and let's move on. And obviously that's not what the audience wanted or needed in that scenario. So by working on thinking about what she was doing with her body, her breath, and her voice, and then thinking about how we might answer that particular question, so the content that she would use, she felt very differently about that question coming up next time. So how can you deal with difficult questions? What are the things that we worked through with that particular client that you could use in your everyday life whenever you're faced with these difficult questions? Well, the first thing, and if you've ever watched any of my videos ever, you won't be surprised at where we're going to start, but it is mindset. Mindset is absolutely critical to our ability to deal with these really complicated, difficult questions. So the very first thing we're going to do is bin the word difficult. And again, if you've watched any of my videos, you will have heard me say this before, and I will keep saying it. Difficult is not a word we want to be using. Difficult suggests that we're going to find this difficult, that it's going to be a real struggle, that there's a possibility of failure. So we want to get rid of that word and we want to think about these questions as stretchy. So they're going to stretch our ability. They're going to stretch our trust in ourselves. They're going to stretch our knowledge and our expertise. But on the other side of stretch is growth. On the other side of stretch is an ability to self-trust. And that's really what we want to develop, because from those two things comes confidence. Confidence is a byproduct. It isn't the thing that we're actually looking for. So we're going to bin the word difficult and we're going to use the word stretchy. So these are stretchy questions. It's a stretchy scenario. Stretchy is good. So what are the 3 mindset things that we need to do to really help us embrace those stretchy questions? Well, number 1, expect stretchy questions. It is a really bad sign if at the end of your talk, your presentation, your panel discussion, that the audience has no questions. If the audience has no questions, it means one of 2 things. 1, you've either bored them senseless with so much information that they have no questions because you've answered absolutely everything. Or number 2, they don't care. They've disengaged from the topic. So if you don't get questions, that is not such a good situation. We want questions. Questions means our audience is engaged with the topic. They're engaged with you. They want to have a conversation. This is a good thing. So expect there to be stretchy questions. The second thing is really, really embrace them. As I said, it is going to stretch you. It's going to stretch your skills. It's going to give you growth and a greater degree of self-trust on the other side, which leads to confidence. So embrace this opportunity to strengthen yourself. It's a bit like going to the gym and doing extra reps. Yeah. So we're doing it with questions, stretching and building that muscle that tells you can deal with these stretchy questions. Now, the second part of mindset is really about owning your expertise, leaning into what you really know. And it's all very well to think about the fact that you do know your subject well, you do work, you've worked in it a long time, you've got experience, but really being able to sit there and say, I am an expert in this particular area can feel very stretchy for some of us. I know it was very stretchy for me for a long time, until I began to understand that expertise is not about knowing everything. So let's go back to that idea of, sitting with ambiguity. It's not about knowing everything. It is about skillfully applying the knowledge that you have. So when you're asked these stretchy questions, leaning back into your expertise, trusting what you already know, trusting your expertise is a really, really important part of answering that question very well, really competently, as comprehensively as the time or the situation allows. So we really want to be leaning in and definitely saying, I am an expert in this area. That doesn't mean there aren't more people out there who know more than you do. There may well be, but you are an expert if you can skillfully apply your knowledge. And then the third part of mindset is really about being curious. Why is this person asking this piece of information? It's looking for the question underneath the question. So let's go back to that example of the client that I was using. So she's on this panel. Somebody in the audience is asking about what this Russian stakeholder means to the organization. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know that individual, but I'm going to take a good guess, an educated guess, and say that question was fueled by fear. So say that person was wanting to invest, say that person was already an investor. They're concerned that there may be interference from a large state in this organization that may upset or disrupt the investment that this person has already made. Now that I've realized that that's a possibility now, and if I was there, I would have heard the tone of voice, I would have seen the facial expressions, I'd have a greater understanding of exactly what this person was concerned about. But now that I've thought about that, it means that when I answer, I'm going to be using language and I'm going to be using a tone of voice that is reassuring, that is going to assuage that fear and help them feel secure that they don't need to worry about their investment, that there is no interference, that the company is extremely solid and bounded in its way of managing itself, and there's no interference from any of the stakeholders at all. So I would know that I need to assuage that fear. I need to help that person feel reassured that their investment or potential investment is secure and safe. Now, if I was in that situation and I realised that it was fueled by a different reason, then I'm going to use different language. I'm going to use a different tone of voice. I'm going to answer that question in a far different way. But I can only do that if I stay curious and I'm looking to see, what is the question behind this question? What does this person or this organisation really, really need to know? What are they concerned about? So for mindset, the 3 things that we need to be doing: expect those questions, embrace them when they come, because we're going to grow because of them. We need to stay curious. What's the question beneath the question? And lean into our expertise. Answer from what we already know. Draw on all the expertise that you already have, and then draw on what you think the audience needs there and then, and create your answer from there. And if appropriate, say you don't know the answer, but you can take some really good educated guesses given your experience. So that's the mindset part. The second thing that you can do is prepare. And again, this is not rocket science. It's going to sound really, really obvious, but I want you to prepare in a specific way. I want you to think about the journalistic questions of who, when, and where. So who is responsible for these things? I think about all the who questions that your audience might ask. Who's responsible for this? Who's responsible if it goes wrong? Who is going to sort out this problem if it arises? Who is going to be rewarded if it all goes well and this is an incredible success? So think about all the difficult who questions that might come up. And then think about all the when questions. So this is often around timings of when things are going to happen, when you're going to know things have been successful, or when they've failed or they've missed the mark. So think about all the difficult when questions that might arise. And then you're going to think about all the difficult what questions. What does success actually look like? How are you going to measure that? So think about all the difficult things. that the what questions could bring up. And then think about, you don't have to write these out in full, but think in bullet points. How would you answer those? What's the fear behind that? What's the concern behind that? What's the question underneath that? And in a couple of bullet points, how would you answer it? And when you've done that, the next most important thing is to think about what would be your, and I'm going to do this in air quotes, which is slightly annoying, but what would be your worst question that could possibly ask? The thing that really sets your heart racing and you really, really, really don't want someone to ask you from the audience. What would be that question? And I want you to write down how you would answer it. And if you want to, rehearse it. Right? Hopefully that question will never be asked. But if it is asked, you are prepared to answer it. Now, there are times when you won't have time to prepare. There are times when you will just be ambushed with a difficult question. If that's the case, you have two options. The first option is you listen to the initial part of the issue, the concern, the complaint, whatever it might be, the question itself. And if you're in a position where you cannot deal with it right then, you say so. But we say it with empathy. So this person has an issue, a concern, they're upset about something, they're bringing you this difficult thing. So we want to reflect that we've seen them. So we see them in their concern, their distress. So I can see that this is a very important topic for you, and I believe it's an important topic too. I don't have the time to devote to it now, which it really, really deserves. But I want to have this conversation with you. Let's schedule a time in the near future where we can discuss this properly and really do this topic justice. If you can, reschedule using that kind of a technique. If you can't, if there's just no way that you cannot answer this difficult question there and then the thing that we need to do is really choose your state. Choose your state of mind. How are you going to be in this moment? Because that is going to make a huge difference. So it might be that you choose to be really calm because this has you've been ambushed. You've got lots of other things you probably should be doing. There is, lots of stuff on your agenda. You don't really want to be having this conversation right now, perhaps in this public space, but you've got no choice. So choose your state. Are you going to be really calm? Are you going to be really curious? So choosing your state can be really, really helpful because it will allow you to listen effectively. And the more effectively you can listen, the better you will be at answering the question. Now, if you don't have time to prepare, this next stage is also very, very important. It is about how we physically answer a difficult or stretchy question. And we want to be thinking about our body. We want to be thinking about the breath and our voice. So again, I will have said this many times on other videos and I will keep repeating it forever and ever, but we need to have a nice open body. So when we get faced with a stretchy question, there can be a sense of recoiling from it. We can close our body down, and that indicates to our audience or to the asker that we're not really feeling confident. We're not owning our expertise. We're not stepping into that space and holding that space for you, the other person, and the difficult question and any emotions that are swirling around with it. So we need to have that really lovely, open, strong body posture. So open chest, relaxed shoulders. Try to make sure that your hands are relaxed, because hands are the bits where we can show tension externally very quickly. So try to make sure your hands are relaxed. If you're sitting, have your hands on your thighs with the palms facing upwards. So that's a posture of receiving. You're receiving information. So try to do that if at all possible. We want to keep the breathing as deep and as slow as possible. And there's two reasons for this. The first reason is it will help you feel calm. It will help you feel you can listen much more easily. And the reason you'll feel calm is when we breathe deeply, we don't release stress hormones because the body's thinking everything is fine, don't need to be on red alert, we're good. So by breathing deeply, you're signaling to your body that everything is okay, no stress hormones required. You'll be able to listen more effectively. But also, you're signaling to the other person that this is okay, this is fine. There is no problem. There's no stress here. So we always want to be signaling to our audience that actually it's all good. Everything is fine. Stretchy questions are welcome around here. We don't shy away from them. Again, demonstrating your ability as a leader in that moment. So leading by breathing deeply allows everybody else in the room to stay relaxed as well. And then finally, with your voice, if you've got an open body posture and you're breathing deeply, the chances are that you will have an embodied voice. So embodied voices sound richer, they sound deeper, they sound more like the expert that you actually are. So if I demonstrate one a disembodied voice sounds like, it sounds a little bit like this. So the voice comes up here. You can feel the energy is higher in my body now. My voice is raised in pitch and it sounds like it's coming out of my head. So do you understand why it's called disembodied? It's not coming out of my body right now. And so I sound a little bit more frantic. I sound less like an expert. Now, if I go back to breathing more deeply, I've let the breath go from my chest. I've let it drop down into my body. I've allowed my voice to drop back down into my body. I just sound calmer. I sound like I know more than I did 2 seconds ago, which I don't. But I sound more like a leader, more like somebody who's in control, more like somebody who can hold space for me, the other person, and the question and emotions. Yeah, I sound like I'm much more in control than if I let my voice come up into my body. So if you don't have time to prepare, and even if you do have time to prepare, how you answer the question with your body is absolutely vital. Open, strong body posture, low and slow, deep breath, embodied voice, and as warm a tone as possible. Yeah, as warm a tone of voice as possible. So you can think about just having a smile. So thinking of your voice like it's got a personality and it has this lovely, warm, rich, relaxed, genuine smile to it. So now we've done all that preparation, we've thought about our mindset, we've prepared all the questions and possible answers that we might have, we've thought about how our body is going to be. Let's start talking about how we answer the content. And I'm going to give you a simple acronym now, A, B, C. So when someone asks a stretchy question, you want to be thinking A, B, C. A is simply for acknowledge. Thank you for your question. I know this is something that's on the minds of many people in our audience, so thank you for asking it. It gives us a great opportunity to answer that. Yeah, so just acknowledge that the question has been asked. Acknowledge the asker. And then we want to be bridging. So we take what they've asked and we bridge it into the content that we want to answer. So we may not want to answer all of the question that they've asked. We may not be able to. There may be some stuff that has to stay private, that we aren't allowed to disclose at this stage. It may be that it's inadvisable to disclose everything at this stage. It may be that we just don't want to answer that question right now because a lot of things haven't been decided. It could be a myriad of reasons why we don't want to answer absolutely everything. But we're going to bridge from where they are to what we want to answer and how we want to answer that question. So it might be they've asked quite a broad spectrum question. And so you can bridge by saying, that's a really interesting question. And obviously it's quite broad spectrum. I am going to answer from my specific area of expertise. So I can't speak to X, Y, and Z, but I absolutely can speak to this bit here. And you answer in that way. So you've bridged, you've taken what they've asked. You've accepted that you don't know everything about that broad subject, but you can answer from your specific perspective. So you've bridged to what you want. And in doing so, you're taking back control of that question. So it could be that you might say, I'm going to answer from this perspective, and then maybe I'm going to hand over to Peter, who can talk more specifically about the financial impact of that. Or that actually reminds me of something that I was discussing with my team earlier this week, and I think it'd be really pertinent for this particular audience. So you can answer the question in that style. So use the acronym: acknowledge, bridge, control. So take the conversation where you'd like it to go next. And then my final piece of advice for these stretchy conversations is have 2 closes. So if you're delivering a speech or a talk, or maybe the last bit that you say on a panel discussion, you want to be summarising the things that you've said. So what are the themes? What are the main points that you want to get across to your particular audience? What is really important to you that the people in the room go away thinking, feeling, and doing? And once you've decided that, you wrap up your talk, your speech, and then you say, I'm going to open the floor to questions now. You answer your questions using all the methods we've talked about, particularly the ABC and the how you answer. And then when you've had one or two, when you've been answering questions for a little while, you're getting towards the end of your time. If you've got a positive question, someone's asked you a lovely positive question, that you're getting close to the end of your time for questions, that is a great time to do your second close. So it's a great time to acknowledge the questions in the room, acknowledge the askers, say, we've had some brilliant questions this afternoon. I'm so pleased you've been able to discuss X and Y and Z, because as I said in my talk, go back to your talk, circle back to your talk. These are the really important things that are going on in the world today. This is why we are good at solving this problem. This is why we should be continuing this conversation, whatever is important. Wrap it up, reiterating your themes, and then finish with your call to action. And make it very clear what you want that audience to be thinking, feeling, and doing when they leave the room. So your talk doesn't die, it continues to live when you leave. So I hope you found today useful. We've been talking about how to answer those stretchy questions when you get them. And it's such an important skill as a leader. You're demonstrating your ability to hold the room, hold that space. Hold you, the other person, the question, the emotions that arise from that, and also to be able to deal with ambiguity of not knowing absolutely everything and doing so with grace, dealing with the people in the room with grace. And there's a series of things that are really important. So the 3 mindset things that you can prepare for are expect those questions. It's great. It means your audience is engaged. Tick. Embrace them. Embrace the stretch, embrace that on the other side of this difficult or stretchy question is growth and is a greater degree of self-trust, which is going to bring confidence. Be curious. What is the question behind the question? Why is this person asking me this? So really think about being in a curious state when you go into the Q&A session and lean into your expertise. Really lean in and trust what you already know and answer questions from your perspective, from what you know. What do you know? Where is your expertise lying? And answer your questions from that particular point of view. If you have time, prepare. Who, when, and what questions. And the difficult question, the one you really, really, really don't want them to ask you. Prepare your answers in bullet point form. Practice them if you've got time. It'll help you when they come up. You'll feel like you've already done it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between rehearsal and experience, so it will think it's done it before. You will feel a lot calmer and more prepared. If you don't have time to prepare, think about how your body is going to answer those questions. So relaxed, open, strong body posture, deep, slow breath, because it signals to everybody else you're fine, they're fine, and there's no chemical reaction, hormonal reaction in your body, so you'll feel calmer. And make sure that voice is embodied, so it's coming out of your body, not allowing that energy to rise up and your voice become disembodied, because you won't sound as expert as you are. When you're actually asking those questions, use that ABC formula: acknowledge, bridge, control. And then finally have those 2 closes. So close up your speech, open it out to the floor for questions. When you've been answering questions for a little while and you know you're coming towards the end of your Q&A session, if you've had a really positive question and a really good discussion and answer on that question, use that as your second close. Thank all the questioners, bring in some ideas from the questions that have been raised that afternoon or that day, and then draw those back to some of the themes and the really important ideas that you were talking about in your speech. Restate your call to action and close, thanking the audience for their time. I hope that you have found today's video very useful. There's some really juicy bits in there about how to deal with difficult questions. If you'd like to have further conversation about how to deal with questions, how to deal with audiences, how to deliver presentations, how to be more visible, more credible as a leader, then please sign up for a coffee chat with me. The link is down below. Take care and have a fantastic day. Bye now.